The neighbor came to my door on a Tuesday after. She was holding a small plant, a housewarming gift, she said, apologizing for how late it was. I'd been in the apartment for 8 months. She laughed about it. I told her not to worry and invited her tea, and we stood in the kitchen talking the way neighbors talk when they've finally gotten around to actually meeting. At some point I mentioned my landlord. I don't remember exactly how it came up. Something about the building, a question about the boiler, and I said something like, I'll ask the landlord. He's always quick to respond. She put her mug down. She asked me what landlord. I told her, the name from the lease. The email address I'd been writing for 8 months. The person who had answered every query within a few hours. Always polite, always helpful, always knowing exactly what I need before I'd fully explain. She looked at me for a long time. Then she said, that apartment has been empty for 2 years. Nobody has lived there since they died. She said it quietly, the way you say something you're not sure the other person is ready. She said people had tried to move in 2 or 3 times since then, but nobody stayed. She said she didn't know exactly why. She said the building just had a feeling after that, and people noticed it, and they left. She said, I don't know who you've been writing to, but it isn't a landlord. I stood in my kitchen and looked at her and thought about 8 months of emails. 8 months of a voice on the other side of the screen that knew this apartment, knew its quirks, knew when the hot water ran slow and which window lit in a draft in winter and exactly how much light the main room got in the mornings. Knew it the way someone knows a place they have lived in for a very long time. I had found the apartment through a listing site. Standard process, photos, floor plan, monthly rate, contact the landlord to arrange viewing. Except there was no viewing. The landlord, the name on the listing was M. Reeves, wrote back within an hour of my inquiry and said the apartment was available immediately, that he was currently out of the country for work, and that if I wanted to proceed he could handle everything remotely. Digital lease, references by email. He left in a lockbox outside the building. He said he'd done it this way before and it worked smoothly. I was in a situation where I needed to move quickly. The price was reasonable. The photos looked good. I told myself the remote process was unusual but not unheard of. Plenty of landlords manage properties from a distance. I signed the lease electronically. I transferred the deposit. The code to the lockbox arrived by email the following week. The key was there. The apartment was exactly as advertised. First floor, high ceilings. A main room with 2 tall windows that faced east and filled with light in the mornings. A kitchen that had been recently updated. New fixtures. Good counter space. A bedroom at the back, quiet, the window looking out over a narrow courtyard. The whole place clean and well-maintained, the kind of apartment that felt like someone had cared about it. I moved in on a Saturday. I didn't meet anyone from the building that first weekend. I unpacked, I bought groceries, I found a good coffee shop 2 streets over. By Sunday evening I had started to feel at home. M. Reeves emailed that afternoon to check the move-in had gone smoothly. I said it had. I said the apartment was exactly what I'd hoped. He replied within minutes, glad to hear it. Let me know if anything needs attention. Enjoy the space. I remember thinking, this is a good landlord. You hear stories. I thought I'd gotten lucky. The first 8 months were genuinely unremarkable. M. Reeves was everything you'd want from a landlord at a distance. Responsive, reasonable, never intrusive. When the kitchen tap developed a drip, he arranged a plumber within 2 days. When I asked about parking, he knew the exact rules for the street without having to check. When I mentioned in passing that the bedroom window lit in a draft, he replied with the precise location of the seal that needed replacing and said he'd organize someone to look at it. He knew the apartment well. That was the impression. The specificity of his answer, the way he described the building's quirks, the way the front door needed to pull before the key turned, the particular board in the hallway that gave a little underfoot. Small things. The things you only know from living somewhere. I didn't think about it at the time. Landlords know their properties. That's normal. It was the email in the 7th month that I kept coming back to after. I had been having a difficult few weeks. Nothing catastrophic. Just the accumulated weight of a hard stretch at work. The specific tiredness that builds when nothing is wrong enough to address, but everything is slightly too much. I hadn't mentioned any of it to anyone, and certainly not to my landlord. I had no reason to. His email that week was routine. A reminder about the annual gas safety check, a date for the engineer, standard, but at the end, after the practical information, there was a line that didn't fit. I hope you're managing all right. The apartment can feel isolating in winter. The light changes and the courtyard gets dark early. It takes some adjusting. You'll find your rhythm. I read it several times. I hadn't told him I was struggling. I hadn't told anyone. And the detail about the courtyard, the light changing, the darkness coming early to that specific window was so precise that it stopped me. Not the kind of thing you write to a tenant you've never met. The kind of thing you write because you remember, because you felt it yourself in that apartment in winter, looking out that window. I told myself he was just being thoughtful, a good landlord who paid attention. I almost believed it. Then the neighbor came to my door. After she left, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and went through every email Reeves had ever sent me. I read them differently now, not as a landlord managing a property from a distance, but as something else I didn't have a name for yet. The specificity was everywhere once I was looking for it, not just the practical knowledge of the apartment's quirks. The tone, the way certain emails had arrived at particular moments, the morning after I'd had a bad night, the afternoon of a day I'd spent entirely alone, the times when the apartment had felt largest and I had felt smallest inside it. I had never noticed the timing before. Now I could not notice it. I looked up Reeves, the name, the email address, the phone number listed on the lease. The phone number went to a generic voicemail. The email address had no associated accounts anywhere I could find. The name returned nothing. No professional listings, no social media, no records of any kind. I called the letting agency whose platform had carried the listing. I gave them the reference number for my lease. After a long time on hold, a woman came back and said she couldn't find the listing in their system. She said the reference number didn't correspond to anything in their database. She asked where I had found it. I told her. She said she'd look into it. She didn't call back. I went to the building manager's office, a small room off the ground floor lobby I had never had reason to visit. An older man, going through paperwork. I introduced myself, gave my apartment number, asked about the tenancy records for my unit. He looked up. He said my apartment had been vacant for 2 years. He said the previous owner, he didn't give a name, just said the previous owner had passed away in the apartment and the estate had been in dispute since then. He said no tenancy agreement had been registered for that unit in 2 years. No formal letting, no deposit held in any account he was aware of. I told him about the lease, the email address, 8 months of correspondence. He looked at me the way the neighbor had looked at me, the specific look of someone deciding how much to say. He said, other people have had similar experiences with that apartment. He said it in the tone of someone choosing words very carefully. He said they hadn't stayed long. He said usually something happened, nothing he could describe precisely, that made them leave within a few weeks. I asked what had made them leave. He was quiet. Then he said, the feeling that they weren't alone, that someone else knew the space better than they did. That whoever it was wasn't unfriendly. Exactly. Just present. Watching. The way someone watches a place they love and don't want to let go of. I walked back upstairs slowly. I stood in the main room and looked at the 2 tall windows and the morning light coming through them and thought about the email in the 7th month. About the courtyard going dark in winter. About the line, you'll find your rhythm, written as if from memory. As if from someone who had stood in this exact room, felt the exact thing I was feeling and knew what was on the other side of it because they had already been through it. Had already been through everything this apartment had to offer and had never left. My phone buzzed. An email. Reeves, I hear you've been asking questions. That's alright. It's a reasonable thing to do. I just wanted you to know. I've enjoyed having. You've taken care of the place. That matters more than you might. I stood in the middle of my apartment with my phone in my hand and read it 3 times. Then I started packing. I was out within a week. I didn't break the lease formally. I didn't know how to break a lease with someone who didn't exist. I just stopped paying. I packed what I needed, left the key in the lockbox, and didn't go back. I stayed with a friend for a month while I found something else. I didn't tell her the full story. I said the apartment hadn't worked out. She didn't push. I reported what I knew to the letting platform, to the building management company, to the local council's tenancy department. I sent them the lease, the emails, the bank transfer records. Everyone was very thorough and very concerned and nothing came of any. The email address stopped responding the day I left. The bank account, I checked, eventually, through my own bank, had been closed. The money was gone. Where it had gone, nobody could tell me. The apartment was relisted 4 months later. Different photos, slightly higher rent. The listing mentioned original features and excellent natural light. I made an account on a tenancy forum and left a detailed warning. I included the address and everything I knew. The post got some responses. A few people who said they'd looked at the apartment felt something off. One person who said they'd moved in briefly and left after 2 weeks without being able to explain exactly why. And one reply, from an account with no post history, created the day they responded. It said, that apartment is very well looked after. The previous owner put a great deal of himself into it. Some people can feel that. Most adjust. I reported the account. It was gone within an hour. The email address it was registered to was the same as Reeves. I've thought about those 8 months more times than I can count. About the emails that arrived at exactly the right. About the line in the 7th month. The courtyard going dark. You'll find your rhythm. And whether that was comfort or something else. Whether it was the gesture of something that remembered loneliness and was trying, in the only way available, to help. I don't know if that's better or worse. I still have all the emails. I've read them again since. They are attentive and warm and specific in a way that genuine landlord correspondence almost never is. They read like letters from someone who cared about the apartment, cared, in some oblique way, about the person living it. I don't know what Reeves was. I know that whatever it was, it's still there, and the apartment is listed again.